So I'm Sonia Thomes, and I am by day the Vice President of Operations at the Nashville Symphony. And by night and weekend, I like to say, created OrchestraCareers.com and have my small but mighty team of Brianna Owens and Sarah Davidson. And just delighted to be with you here today. Thank you so much for showing up and for this conversation all about the path from musician to manager. And this conversation is so important to me. Number one, I studied oboe and I did not know my career in operations existed till after grad school. So I still am on the path transitioning from musician to manager, and I've been working for orchestras for over 15 years. But it's such a common question that comes to me and to my peers about, well, but how did you take those steps? And who did you talk to? There's no book written, right? We're going to write the book today. And no two stories are the same, which is why I needed some help from my professional friends, Paula, Mily, and Jennifer. So we are going to dive right in, and I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to start with you, Jennifer. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what instrument you studied in school?
Oh, absolutely. I'm really delighted to be here and nice to see some familiar faces. Hi there. Hi, Liam. Hi, Aileen. It's great to see you. So thanks for coming. I'm the executive director of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. My name is Jennifer Barlament, and I played the clarinet. That was my entry into this world, and really delighted to be here and hear your questions and talk a little bit about what it's like to be executive director.
Thank you. Mily.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mily. I'm the annual fund coordinator at the Omaha Symphony. So I work in fundraising, the best job, in my opinion. I have my bachelor's degree and my master's degrees are in flute performance. And I got a second master, that's where we talk about my pivot, is in arts leadership and management.
And Paula.
Hi everyone, I'm Paula, and I am currently the digital marketing coordinator at the Houston Symphony, and I'm also getting my master's at University of Houston in arts leadership. And in my undergrad, I studied at Indiana University, Jacobs School of Music, and I got my degree in flute performance. So it's great to be with you all.
Great. So we're going to dive right in and just give a little backstory, because when I was thinking about this topic, one of the first questions I want to ask our panelists is, who were you as a freshman in college? Because I think that when I think of myself as a freshman in college, I was living the dream. I was in music school finally, where I could just eat, sleep, breathe, play oboe, right? And make new friends who all wanted to do the same thing. And so I just had some great dreams to be, frankly, the first female principal oboist of the Chicago Symphony. That was my dream, and that was the trajectory I was trying to put myself on. So I just want to hear a little bit about, let's reminisce. Paula, we'll just jump right back to you. Like, who was Paula freshman year of music school?
That wasn't too long ago for me, actually. It was maybe 4 years ago. And I really wanted to become a professional flutist in an orchestra. That was really the only career I knew of. I knew of three. I knew of being a performer, a teacher, and a composer. And I didn't really want to be a band director because I thought that was way too much pressure to have to be in charge of teaching people how to play an instrument and all the bad habits that I might give them and all those things. So I was like, okay, I think I want to be a performer. I really like to do that. And so that's what I went to school to do. And I had a good time, learning with my teachers and playing in different ensembles. I know we're going to get to the pivot later, so I won't go there, but I don't know. I had a good time as a freshman in college. It was really great being at a school where I was allowed to branch out a little bit and take some gen eds and learn about other interests that I might have had, and also just focusing on and playing with really, really wonderful musicians, and so just developing my craft as an artist and getting to know myself as well as a person.
And Mily, so who was Mily freshman year?
So I unlike a lot of people, I knew I wanted to do music in elementary school. And I was like 8, and I told my mom, I was like, I'm gonna do music. That's gonna be my career, whatever it looks like. And so I grew up in Texas, in Dallas, and I knew I didn't want to be, by the time high school went around, like my senior year, I knew I didn't want to be a band director again. Whole pressure thing, it's kind of weird in Texas. It's like really intense. So I didn't want to be a part of that club. And but in specifically North Texas, like at the time and still now, you can have a career in freelancing. Like you can have a full-time studio and have like 80 students and gig, even if you're not the principal of the Dallas Symphony. Like there's so many opportunities. And that's where I grew up. That was like where I grew up. So that is when I started undergrad. That is like what I wanted to do, was have a full-time studio and freelance and just be a freelancer. And that was the dream. And I was kind of living that dream a little bit. Like, of course, like in high school, I didn't do enough music. So when I got to college, like everything was music and I was like loving it. And my freshman year was just, it was so freeing because I finally felt like I was able to study what I wanted. And that was what consumed my days. And so unlike Paula, my school did not have very many opportunities in undergrad for me to explore other fields, which was unfortunate. And my pivot happened later. And at my school, it was basically music at or bust. I think I was one of 3 performance majors in my entire class. And we didn't offer any other degrees other than music ed and performance. So couldn't even get like a composition major or anything. It was just, yep. So that's kind of where I was. And for reference, I was freshman in like 2013, so a little bit older than Paula.
Hi, Jennifer. So who were you as that freshman clarinetist?
Okay, so as a freshman, I was really excited and very thrilled to be in college. It was really exciting to be away from home. And, you know, I went to a liberal arts university as an undergraduate, but I was also very confused. So I think this is one of the things that I see with people who end up in management careers, like many of you have said, like you don't know that they really exist until you're a little bit older, and you get into things a bit. And if you find yourself liking to do a lot of different things, arts administration might actually be a fantastic option for you. So my story, just really quickly, I went to Emory University as an undergraduate, and having grown up in South Georgia near Savannah, which is where all my teachers played and worked in the Savannah Symphony, I was exposed to the reality of how hard it can be to make a living as a professional musician at a very young age, because that orchestra really struggled and the compensation was not very good. And so I always had it in the back of my head that it was okay to do music as an avocation, but I really shouldn't be thinking of it as a vocation. But I did it a lot. Like my sister and my brother and I all were very enthusiastic orchestral musicians, and we all still play. And all play different instruments. So music was a big part of our lives. And then when I went to college, like I said, I thought I was going to be an engineer. And then I kept having these like less and less practical ideas about what I would do as a career, and ended up in the middle of my junior year deciding that what I wanted to be was a clarinetist. And it was really at the encouragement of my music teachers. You know, my clarinet teacher said, well, you can always go into physics later, but music is the sort of thing that you have to do when you're young. So decided to jump in with both feet, went to graduate school at Eastman, wonderful school where many of you on this screen have been to school. And it was there that I discovered orchestra management, kind of like through the grapevine. So this is another truism I think about. Even people who are playing an instrument, going to conservatory, you may or may not be exposed to the concept of there being other careers in orchestral music, ways to support music and ways to support orchestras, other than being a player in an orchestra. And I think that's one of the dynamics that I personally am passionate about trying to change. So yeah, that's my story.
So Jennifer, I want to go back to something you said where you kind of were exposed to the world of orchestra management in grad school, but can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, was it a person? Was it a class? Like, how did you become aware of these roles off the stage?
So at the time that I went to Eastman, which is a long time before anybody else on the screen, they didn't have they were just starting the arts leadership program, and actually they were in between sort of orchestra for graduate student solutions. So I was a graduate student. My kind of freshman year experience that those of you were talking about earlier was my first year of graduate school. I was like, I've been playing in, a college/community orchestra for all these years. I'm so excited to be in a school with all these other musicians who are just really expert at their instruments. And I really want to play an orchestra, and I want to play great repertoire so I can get ready for auditions, because I know it's really hard. So, so finding there not to be a really, great orchestra solution for graduate students at Eastman, I decided with a few colleagues, fellow students, to start an orchestra. And it started out as a repertoire reading orchestra, and it gradually just got more and more, it's like orchestra management sucks you in. It's like a wormhole, and got more and more excited about it. Started doing concerts out in the community. We built this team that we called the management core groups. We kind of built a mini orchestra and a mini orchestra staff. And it wasn't until I was into that, maybe a year or so, that we've been doing that. Somebody said, you can do this for a living. And then, the light bulb went off. And so it was sort of a combination of learning on the ground and finding my way into it totally by chance. And out of a desire to make opportunities for myself and my colleagues to play great music, which, has been my passion all along. So that's, and then a combination of that, and then also, carrying teachers and grown-ups along the way who said, you should think about doing this as a career. Let me tell you about these opportunities. Let me help get you signed up for, class, and have helped guide me. And that's been the case throughout my entire career, is that I've had really fantastic mentors.
Yeah, it almost sounds like this path kind of unfolded in front of you, which is really, I relate to your part of the story where it was almost like you had this innate drive to create the things that you wanted to happen. And when I was at Eastman, that definitely was awakened in me, and I would not have known to call it concert production or orchestra management or whatever. I just knew I wanted to play Mozart Symphony Concertant. And so I booked the main hall, and I recruited my colleagues, and I conducted from my chair. I was like, I'm just going to make it happen. And so, fast forward many years later, I realized I had just had this aptitude for, organizing and leading, and I guess boldness to just say, well, no one else is going to make it happen. I will. So Mily, when you were in school, when did you become aware or start to become aware of these other paths and other opportunities? Was it a person? Was it a class? Was it what was it?
Yeah, so obviously, I always knew, I grew up going to thankfully the Dallas Symphony, and I grew up going to and I knew somebody was selling the tickets and somebody was putting out the programs, but I never realized, even through undergrad, that was really a thing, a full-time job, career field. Again, I went to undergrad where that was never talked about. I'm probably the first person in my undergrad that is doing this, probably. I don't know of anybody else. This actually kind of stemmed from more personal reasons. So I was dating my now husband for 2 years, and at that point, I knew we knew we were going to get married, and he told me that he had 5 more years of school, that he was going to do his master's and his doctorate, and right now he's in a second year doctoral student in music composition. And basically my options were, I could support somebody through school, or I can wait 5 years to marry him. And I know it's kind of a different story, but I think these stories are also important, because we also have lives and husbands and children and things like that. And that is also a part of who we are as professionals. And at that point I was like, how am I going to support this person as a flutist and a freelancer? Can I make enough money to do that and support somebody who's on a TA? So So my I knew that I wanted to do a flute master's basically in 2017. And that fall semester, I was really reconsidering it. And Tanner and I were talking about maybe some other skills that I had or things that I had enjoyed doing in undergrad. And he said, what if you like look into arts management? And like something, again, a light bulb moment, I was like, yeah, maybe I should look into that. And it actually happened kind of, this whole thing, this whole shift for me kind of happened fairly quickly. And I remember that semester we were looking at potentially me doing a certificate or another master's in arts management. And that same weekend, I got a message from our director of the school where I was doing my master's, Wichita State, that Wichita State was starting a degree in arts management. And that moment I was like, well, this is a sign. I'm religious. I was like, this is a sign from God that this is exactly what I should be doing. I immediately like put my name in or whatever. So I was actually like I started I was the first person to go through the degree. I was the guinea pig throughout the whole thing. I was like helping like build the classes, and like I saw the whole process of like how a degree goes through like the board of regents. It was really interesting. I had a very interesting experience going through that. So that was fall 17. And then I knew that I probably needed to have some sort, as I was researching, some sort of like real life experience. And so that same, like within a couple weeks, I got in touch with the operations manager at the Wichita Symphony, Samantha. And I was like, thankfully she had coffee with me, and she was my first like real mentor throughout all this. And I'm eternally grateful for her. And her husband is a director of bands at Wichita State. We had a great relationship. So it was just, he also really helped me pivot my career. And I was like, at that point, I felt like it was too late for me. I had started a master's in flute, and I was like, I don't have an undergrad in this. Like, is it too late for me to do it? Like, that was like my main concern and question. And for her, and she said, no, it's not too late. And we actually need an intern. So like a month later, I started my internship at the Wichita Symphony. And I also started this degree. It was I feel like it was like a blink of an eye, and it was like I was in the middle of this. And I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to make a copy. I didn't know how to use a printer. Like I didn't know how to like do anything at all, because I had been studying flute my whole life. That's all I knew. I knew how to play the flute. That was my only skill. And I'm just so grateful for the Wichita Symphony for taking me in and like teaching me all of these skills. And I was there from 2018 to when the pandemic ended, or this pandemic started. So like July of 2020. And they really taught me all of the ropes. And thankfully they're a small staff. So I got to basically delve into like all different areas. And I'm just so grateful for that experience. And I lived in a town where, you know, there was an orchestra, and I just put myself out there, and the opportunities came towards me. And that I'm really grateful for that. And I think that's something that I love about this career, is that everybody's really open to bringing people in, because we want musicians to be on the dark side. How should I say it? You know, because I'm the only musician on the development team, you know, and it's different. I can talk to donors differently, and I can talk to them about Mahler, and I can talk to I have that skill set. So anyway, that's kind of my pivot story. So
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that story. It's just, you know, and you're gonna hear that no two stories are the same. And so that's why it's so important that we all be ready and willing to share our story, because that means more people can connect and more people can be encouraged that, yes, I believe I have a destination career as VP of operations at the National Symphony, like, and every single person on this call, these are destination careers. And my dreams are big to, you know, like high schoolers should know about orchestra operations. So that's another conversation for another day. But Paula, so can you talk a little bit about when did you become aware that there were these careers off the stage for an orchestra, and what made you kind of want to take the step that direction?
Sure. So I actually found out about arts administration pretty much at the end of my freshman year. So it's kind of funny how the first question, this is kind of leading into my next step. So it was actually a family friend that whose son was in an arts administration program. It actually happened to be the one that I'm currently in. And that was when I found out what arts administration was. I had no idea. I mean, Millie, exactly what you're saying. Like, I just knew concerts were put on. I didn't know people did that full time at all. But when I did find out, my dad, he sent me a job posting for an internship with the Youth Orchestras of San Antonio, and it was for an operations internship. And so I got that, and that was my first like step into arts administration. And I loved it. It was amazing just getting to talk and connect with students and parents and families, and just really be a part of the organization's mission, and really bringing music to different communities where I'm from. I'm from San Antonio, so that was really special for me. Have been a flutist in that youth orchestra, getting to see the other side of it as an administrator. So that was really my first look. I had a super positive experience there, and so positive where I decided to add a minor in arts management to my undergrad degree. And through that, I took different classes and learned about different aspects of arts administration. And I really started to really like it, because I noticed in those classes and what articles I was reading and seeing online with a lot of things related to diversity, equity, inclusion, I saw that it was really up to administrators, like top management, to really make a lot of those changes. I realized that if I were to pursue the path that I wanted to be a professional musician in orchestra, I really had to be someone huge like Yo-Yo Ma or Anthony McGill to really have my voice be heard in the way that I could have it heard as an administrator in the back end of things. So because my passion for that really outshined my passion for being a musician on stage, needing to be in the spotlight, I really wanted to make a difference in what I did as a profession. And also, the thing that really sealed the deal and really marked my key pivot completely from flutist to going really hard for being an arts administrator, it was actually in a master class that I was in with one of my flute professors, and he was talking to one of the flutists who was performing, and she was performing this really, really difficult run, and he really honed in on 1/16 note that she was playing that was out of tune, and he made her play it over and over until it was right, and he paused and told us all, if you don't want to do this level of detailed work in the practice room, this field isn't for you. And I was like, yeah, it's not for me, because I like to play flute, but that sort of like intensity, and it's something I didn't have the patience for. And when I have much bigger things, in my opinion, to think about, and I love to support musicians in what they like to do, if they're the ones that want to be doing all that grinding for hours upon hours, great. I realized I had a lot other skills that I could use, so I decided to do it that way. And I know in the next question we're going to talk about the specific steps that I did to do that. So yeah, that's my pivot.
I love it, Paula. So Jennifer, I'd love to come back to you. So as you were kind of having this, I feel like it felt like you were stepping onto a path, leading this orchestra, creating this orchestra. But can you get a little more specific now? Because I felt in my own life that the transition from student to professional was really hard. And I speak to my student friends and my early professional friends who are in the trenches right now. And it is hard. It is scary, and it is full of rejection and all the things. So can you just talk about, when did you feel like, what was that like for you to make that step into your first job? And what were some of the things you were doing to try to affect that success?
Okay, so I had a very unfair advantage because when I was coming up through the field, there was a program called the Orchestra Management Fellowship Program, which basically just like threw you in there at 3 different orchestras in the course of a year. And you suddenly got to be kind of like a fly on the wall in all of these extraordinary settings. And I remember being really afraid and very nervous in most of those settings. And I feel like, to get a chance to, start your career going to like all of the board and committee and negotiating meetings of the San Francisco Symphony is an incredible privilege and advantage. And I, never take that for granted. So I hope that one day the field will be able to figure out how to create that kind of transition program again, because I feel like there's nothing like actually being inside an orchestra organization and being able to see how the staff works. If you're wanting to get into this field, the number 1 and number 2 things I always recommend to people are, 1, get an internship with an orchestra, just work, hopefully it's a paid internship. We all who are in the field are working hard to ensure that there are, fair opportunities for people to have a chance to see what it's like. But really, there's nothing like actually being in the trenches and having somebody who is your supervisor say, that person really knows what she's doing. She's reliable. She is organized. I highly recommend Mily to come work for the Omaha Symphony. And to have somebody vouch for you to show that you can be successful in that environment is really important. And I'm also a big fan of informational interviews. So I have people reach out to me. Others of you might also have people reach out to you. There are, hundreds of professionals in this career. You don't only have to reach out to the top administrators, but, I've rarely met somebody in my kind of position who says no to a request for an informational interview, because we're all really passionate about what we do. We really want to, help bring the next generation of administrators along. So, and Sonia, what you're doing is this incredible opportunity for people to get kind of a little bit of a peephole into the way things work in the industry. So I'm really grateful to you for doing that. But to me, that's, getting a little bit of a foothold, seeing what it's like from the inside, talking to the people who are in the trenches day to day, and just asking what's it like makes a huge difference and will give you a great deal more confidence as you start to apply for positions. And so for me, the transition was really from being a student into this fellowship program, which was more like student-ish, and then from the fellowship program into my first professional job. And people often ask me, like, should I work for a big orchestra in a more junior position? Should I work for a small orchestra in a more senior position? And my answer to that is always, it really depends on you and what your learning style is. It depends on who you're working for. You want to work for a manager who's going to invest in you, who believes in you, who is going to help you learn and grow, and who's going to tell you if you've done something wrong. I had that when I was coming up in the field. That feedback loop is incredibly important, and that all comes from having a great relationship with your manager. And if you're the kind of person who likes to just, like you buy something from IKEA and you don't look at the instructions, you throw them away, just jump in and start doing, then maybe you are a, jump right in and be a, director of marketing in a smaller orchestra kind of a person. Or if you feel like you like to have a guide or like to get your feet wet before before you go to a position where you have more responsibility, then perhaps starting at a lower position or a more junior position in a bigger orchestra makes sense for you. It really, really totally depends on your learning style, what you're trying to get into. And then in terms of what department you want to get into, I know for me, I always wanted to work with musicians. I wanted to be close to the music. So I ended up going into operations, and that was a great path for me. So starting with your strengths, where you're passionate, where you have good relationships and can be successful. That's always really important.
Well, it sounds like the fellowship program kind of really gave you the footing that you needed. And am I remembering correctly, it was about a 9-month fellowship, like full-time fellowship, right?
It was 12 months.
12 months.
Yeah. And it was like all in. So it was 3.5 months in each of 3 different orchestras. And for me, that was San Francisco, New Jersey, and Detroit. They also had like a little bit of training in Washington, D.C.
Well, and I think that, so you're getting your footing, you're getting this look and this, like you said, fly on the wall perspective of inside the orchestra. And that is possible through internships. My point of pivot was 6 months after graduating with no plan, with no performance degree, a master's degree. And I got an operations internship at the National Symphony at the Kennedy Center. I was like, great, what's operations? And it gave me 3 months to really kind of get my feet wet, right? So getting that footing and getting that intensive behind the scenes look, but also building the network and the relationships you got to do, I imagine, in each of those settings, and really building bridges everywhere you go. So Mily, can you talk a little bit about then your transition from that internship into your first job? Like, what were some of the steps you were trying to actively take to make that transition happen?
Yeah. People always ask me, like people have always asked me this question. And I personally am in the believer that if you really want to do this, my belief is to get some sort of paper, the degree or certificate or something, and the internship. Because that was my experience. And I think that it has made the most impact in my career, even though I'm just starting out. But the things that I was learning in the classroom, I was able to apply every single day in my internship. And that really helped me like develop my skill set really strongly, I feel like. And the thing about specifically my program, it was a leadership-based program and management. So it really helped me develop my, like, the fluffy stuff. So it helped me develop like what my vision was specifically for me, the orchestra, and like long-term goals and the impact that I wanted to make, and my purpose and my why, and all of those things that I don't feel like you really get in like the day-to-day, like making copies and sending out whatever and running this to the hall, and and that's important. But I do think that that's a skill that I'm grateful that I learned, or things that I learned in the classroom in my degree. And I also like learned how to manage the management, and I had a development class and a strategic planning class, and things that I just need to know. That was helpful. But yeah, so my internship at the Wichita Symphony, I got to do a lot of things. I did operations. I mostly did community engagement and worked with our youth orchestras. I ran one of the youth orchestra ensembles on the administrative side. And so doing both of these things throughout my time in Wichita, those 3 years that I was there, was probably the biggest things that helped my career. And the other thing that has really helped my career is the N word, networking, that nobody likes. So I know that's kind of a gross word, and like a lot of people don't like doing it. I love doing it because I'm very extroverted. I love talking to people. I love getting to know everybody. And that really helped. I basically tried to get to know everybody who was an arts management role in my city, which was not that big. And one of my biggest mentors, her name was Angela Cassette. She's the general manager at Music Theater Wichita. Yes, we all love her. She's like a fundraising genius. And she taught one of my classes. I was never her intern, but she knew of me, and we connected. And I was kind of intimidated by her because I know she was like this person, and like all these organizations all over the country call her and they're like, please work for us. And she's like, no, I'm staying. And anyway, so she's really well respected in the field. And she taught one of my classes. and she's basically the reason I have one of the biggest reasons I have my job, because she also worked for the Omaha Symphony. So and she like was on texting terms with our CEO, with Jennifer Barlament. And so I was taking all these steps: networking, school, my internship. I also did another random internship, not orchestra related, at Drum Corps International. That was an interesting summer. And I got a lot of different experience doing that, but still it was very helpful. And so I graduated into the pandemic. That was a very scary time for me. We had moved to Lincoln, and we had just gotten married. It was a raging pandemic. I was unemployed, and all of these things helped me land my job at the Omaha Symphony. And even in a pandemic, I was able to get my dream job, which is something that I also just like want to scream from the rooftop sometimes, that like there are so many jobs open in our field all the time, even in a pandemic. So when all my musician friends didn't have a job, like when orchestras were shut down, when all these things, I was still able to get a job in a performing arts field. And so I made it through the first interview, made it through the second interview, and right at the end, Angela texted Jennifer about me, and basically that sealed the deal, I guess. And I'm just really grateful. It's who you know, the degree, and the internship. That's really what helped me. And so yeah, long story, but yes.
No, that's great. I mean, you're just reiterating, like, there is no one way to make that step. It is the combination of all these things, which is why it's so exhausting and why it's so challenging. But Paul, I want to turn to you before we get to our last question. So you just got your first job this summer, right? And so what, in addition to what we've talked about, what did you feel like were some of those, steps that you were trying to take that, or people that came into your world? What contributed to your ability to make the first step?
Yeah, so obviously all of my steps that I took happened during my undergrad, and it really kicked off. Like I did a few internships at IU. One was a marketing and communications internship with African American Arts Institute, which that was really a wonderful experience. But it was really going into I was planning before the pandemic. I was planning on, okay, what am I going to do for the summer 2020 before the pandemic? And so I was applying for internships, and I was just trying to see what my next step was going to be, but I didn't get anything. And so that summer, when the pandemic ultimately, maybe not, even if I didn't get the internship, it would have been canceled anyways. Even if I got the internship, it would have been canceled. But I took that summer to really think about, okay, what do I need to do to really be able to be successful in getting that next step? And so I made a LinkedIn, and I started just reaching out to different people, doing the informational interviews that everyone is talking about. And I also met with my career counselors at both colleges that I was a part of, because I was at the Jacobs School of Music, so I met with those career people. But I also met, since I had my arts management minor, I also met with the career counselors there. And so I got both sorts of perspectives on what I should do with that. And I do recommend you all to talk to those people, because the advice that they give is just amazing. And so in doing those steps, like I made a website and I did all this random stuff that was like, okay, what am I going to do to figure out the next step? And in that networking, I also ended up getting a research grant to study about how arts administrators approach diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so one of my interviewees actually connected me to Portia Dunkley, who is, she was a part of the Sphinx Lead cohort, and she's an arts administrator in South Florida, in Miami. And she has started an ensemble called the New Canon Chamber Collective, and it's specifically to play the music of Black and Brown composers performed by Black and Brown musicians. And she needed some help with marketing, actually. And so that was really that connection. It was of such a random connection. And I would tell people, yeah, I have a remote job in Miami now. Like, I don't, it was really weird, but it was, I didn't know anything about marketing. So I was just doing a lot of testing to see what would happen. But I realized I enjoyed like the process of it. And so in doing all of that other career development things, I did end up landing an internship for the summer of 2021. And that was a diversity and arts leadership internship with Nashville Symphony. And that was in the community education and community engagement department. And that was a wonderful opportunity to work at Nashville Symphony, but also to get the professional development opportunities that the Americans for the Arts Partnership also offered. They had a lot of classes for us to be able to just learn about just this career of arts admin as a whole. And so while I was doing community engagement, I really loved it. I was realizing I do want to learn more about marketing, but I didn't know where to start with that, because I knew I was going to be going into my master's program, but I was really, really wanting to gain a lot more hard skills that I knew that the master's program would offer me, specifically in marketing. And so I found the job opening, and I was really nervous to apply for the Houston Symphony, because I was like, I did not feel qualified, because I felt like I haven't had a full-time job before. I've only had a few internships and worked for student organizations, and I don't know, everything was on such a small scale that I've done before. But all of my mentors at that internship program really encouraged me to apply for that role. And then also I was able to connect with someone from OrchestraCareers, believe it or not, and they worked for the Houston Symphony in the past, and they really helped me get ready and feel comfortable in my interview and all of those things. So really, like what Mily was saying, the networking is just so key and vital. Like, that has gotten me so many places, and it's really wonderful. And I ultimately went through, the rounds of interviews, and I got the role at the Houston Symphony, and that's where I currently am. I've actually only been there maybe for a little over a month now, but in just that short amount of time, I've learned so much about I've been gaining the exact skills that I've been wanting to. So I'm so happy to be here, and it was a long process, like how we said, but I'm really happy with how things are going so far.
Oh, I love it. Well, if I'm encouraged, so I hope that our attendees today are encouraged by these stories. I've got one hit list, one last question for our panelists, like a lightning round question. And so then I'm going to turn over to you attendees for your questions. So just the last question, what are some of the skills you did not learn in music school that you've needed to learn on the job? I'll just start. It's working with people. They're everywhere. And I think I still I'm just trying to figure out how to work better with people. And I think it's not explicitly shared and taught in music school how to do that without your oboe in your hand, or your flute in your hand, or your clarinet in your hand, right? So it's working with people. But any one of you can unmute from the panel. And just, what is a skill that you did not learn in music school that you've had to learn in your career?
I think that's so interesting that you said that, because I felt in my music school experience, like those soft skills I felt were pretty well developed with my chamber music experience specifically, because that was really collaborative effort where we had to really talk to each other to really figure out how we wanted to convey our artistry. And so that was something that was really emphasized at the Jacob School of Music, to always talk to each other, use each other as a network. And so if there is a composer, that's always, they need people to perform their music, so we do that. And then we work with the conducting majors, and we work with the audio engineers to get the portfolio for everybody to to record the work. And so it's always been a huge like collaborative process at music school, and it's always been really wonderful having those skills. And so the skills that I needed to develop were solely my hard skills. So I didn't know how to do anything at all. So I've been learning how to use Photoshop, WordPress, Tessitura, all this stuff. I learned about copywriting, and just general like communications as a whole, it's almost a whole another art form, if you will. And I just did not know about any of this stuff, and I learned it on the job. My supervisor has been wonderful, just teaching me about these things. They were, they knew exactly what my skills gap were, and they've been, getting me up to speed really, really quickly. And so those were things that I wish I had learned also in my financial management class. I'm realizing that it would have been good for me to have taken accounting or economics in my undergrad, just because I do want to end up in a more senior level. And so if I had a better like understanding of how budgets worked and how money worked, that would have also been really helpful.
I'll go next. So I took a very surface level development class, which I loved. I was in a class with all full of not music people, so that was great. It was all like master of public administration majors, brilliant people, who all worked for different like nonprofits that were not music. It was awesome. So skill that school did not teach me is anything that had to do with outside people. So I'm talking about the audience and donors, like how what they think about, because those are the people that we're trying to, right? The people that are supporting us by buying tickets and the people that are giving us funds, or and so I just never spent time really thinking about how those people felt and their experience coming into the concert hall. And that's all I think about now every single day. And because I don't work with the musicians, so which is fine. I love what I do. And I spend every single day thinking about donors. And that's something that I really like. And just I didn't know anything about how to run an annual fund campaign, but now I do. So and how much money it takes to run an orchestra. I didn't really know that, and how much money we need to fundraise for that to happen. And I honestly didn't have any skills before I started my internship. I didn't know just like how working in an office was. Like I didn't know how to run the copy machine. Like I didn't know how to use Excel. Like I didn't know anything. So this is some encouragement to you guys. If you don't know, I figured it out, and I'm doing fine. And then the biggest hurdle probably so far in my career has been Tessitura. That thing is a beast. And if you want to work for a lot of major organizations in the country in marketing or fundraising, that is something that you have to wrap your hair around and learn. So that's just the way of life if you want to do like ticketing or fundraising. So that's one of the main CRM systems in the United States. So
okay, I have a lot to say about this, but I'm going to try to say it really briefly. I mean, I think one of the things that I wanted to say is that as a classical musician, like think of what you have already conquered and learned in your lives, the incredible discipline, the way you know the music inside and out. And so I feel like one of my encouragements is if you have mastered an instrument or any kind of musical discipline to a very high degree, you already have pretty much everything in your toolbox you need to be able to learn how to do office jobs. And then ironically, the thing that I have found in my career that can sometimes kind of be a hard thing for people to, a hard bridge for people to go across when you're coming into a management job is like, it feels like you're doing a lot of things that don't seem important. right? So like you've been kind of observing orchestra management from a distance, having all sorts of ideas about the way it should be done, but there's certain things you don't know. And it's actually the simple things, the things that seem simple on the surface that have a true art to them. So the things I would encourage you to do is, as you go into your career, if you do become a manager, like work hard to see the art in every single thing that you do. There is an art to how you set up the chairs on the stage, and it can be done at a world-class level, and it can be done carelessly, and the impact of both of those on the output of the institution is actually really important. So like you got to really love the details in your management career just the same way you love the details and worked out, you know, like what Paula said, worked out that, you know, that 1/16th note that was out of tune. The same discipline applies to your career as a manager, because the better you do your work, the better your colleagues on stage can move the hearts and minds of the people who are our patrons, who are there seeking inspiration. So it's all part of the same system. So I will just say there are three things that I do feel in my career that are like kind of technical skills for me as an executive director that I've found, or as a general manager in my career, that are definitely worth getting some hard learning education about, simply because if you don't know a lot about them, they can get you in trouble legally and financially. So one is human resources, you know, managing people, leadership, knowing how to, you know, hire and unhire people and all that kind of stuff. It's really important, super critical. And there's a real technique behind it, a lot of knowledge. The second one is finance, how to read a spreadsheet, what is a balance sheet, what's an income statement, you know, those sorts of things are really important. And you won't just learn it from picking it up. You know, you're going to have to get somebody to teach you. And then the third thing is negotiating contracts, especially collectively bargained contracts. When you think about how important those are for our field and how important it is to understand how to manage within a collectively bargained environment, it's super, super critical to know not just how to negotiate a contract correctly, but also how to manage within that context. Right, Sonia?
Yes. That goes back to my statement, how to work with people. There's many layers to that. Okay, it's time, live Q&A. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, I'll call on you and you can introduce yourself and ask your question. Daniela.
Hi, I'm Daniela. So I just finished my doctorate in flute performance and pedagogy at the University of Iowa. Yes, I'm a flutist. So hey guys, great to meet everyone. Thank you so much for saying all of that. Yeah, so okay, my first question, as somebody who's been in school for the past 10 years, and you know, I'm thinking about, you know, obviously with the doctorate I could teach, right? I could go into academia and try to do that, but as many of you said, you know, I'm really good at other things too. I have some great people skills. I'm a really organized person, and I find that I really enjoy, you know, like maybe the back end of things a little bit. I feel like it does make a huge difference to have somebody on your team who's a musician and has that background. So like, you know, and we talked about getting maybe a certificate or doing something like that, but would you guys say that that's absolutely necessary, or can you do this without necessarily going to school again or getting that certificate? Like, what are the options if you're just either not able to afford it or don't have the time or the resources? Like, is it possible?
Yes. I don't have a degree in what I do. I have a 15-year on the job degree in arts management. And I used to joke all that I know I learned on the job, but Yeah, no, I think going back to, I think Jennifer and Mily and Paula, it sounds like we've all had some version of an internship experience. And I think getting just go right to it. And it might be a part-time job in an organization. If you join the box office, like, you are on the road to knowing about the organization really quickly. And so there's a lot of like part-time options, but also, and the problem is once you get out of school, internships are usually for college credit. So a lot of times you actually won't have access to that. There's also the Essentials of Orchestra Management program at the League, and we'll definitely let you know more about that. Jennifer teaches at it, and it's going to come back this summer, and that's a 10-day intensive. And I've heard great things about that program, and everyone who comes through it comes out of it. And you are well positioned to do something like that.
I would like to say in my office, I think I'm the only person that has a degree. Just putting that out there. I'm a degree in arts management, I think.
Oh,
Maybe Meg has a certificate or something. I don't know about the new people, but for most of the year that I've known all the people. So, and out of like that, I think out of the 20 of us, only like maybe a couple of us have music degrees. Like not a lot of people. Like, so, and our senior staff, like not. Like, so yes, no, you don't need a degree. I advocate for I think the field, based on like what I've seen, is shifting towards that. That's why I decided to do I was single, I didn't have kids, it was online, it was flexible. I was like, I'm just gonna do this right now. Just get the piece of paper and then we're moving on. And so I don't think it's necessary at all, but I do know a lot of people who have gotten like entry level positions, like Sonia was saying, or like part-time. And it also helps if, I don't know your personal situation, you have to say, but like it helps if you are flexible on where you're applying. If you can basically like get up and move, you probably would be able to find a job if you apply to enough places. I really do think so. It gets difficult if you're like tied down somewhere, or even though I moved to Nebraska, which is like not like our hub out here, I was still able to get a job. So, so yeah, that's what I would say, my experience. So.
Great.
thank you.
Sienna.
Hello. Okay, I have a question. I know that Jen and Sonia, so I'm like Millie, to where my school did not have, very much, diversity in its degree offerings of, it's just music ed and music performance. But I did want to ask, so I don't know much about the arts management program, so that's why I joined and wanted to find out more about it. So for Jen and Sonia, you mentioned that you work in operations. What does that entail?
Oversee concert production. So I oversee the stage managers, audio, lighting, and also our personnel managers who directly support the musicians of the orchestra. So I am backstage all the time. No 2 days are the same, but I like to describe it as overseeing the logistics of the stage, but also making sure the musicians have all the information they need so they can focus on just playing their instrument. That's a lot of communication, that's a lot of schedules, and making sure rehearsal times and dates and locations and driving directions are all squared away and good to go. It also means I need to know that the contract, the collective bargaining agreement, front to back is a little ambitious. I know lots of chapters really, really well, but making sure our organization is in compliance with all those provisions for how we can work the musicians. It's long-term planning, it's short-term, what's happening this week, who needs a microphone, how many chairs and stands, and do we need to rent Glocken? I love it. It's the logistics of the stage and supporting our musicians every day.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is that operations means different things in different places. So it means different things at a touring orchestra than it does at a regional orchestra, and it also means different things from place to place. So you really have to ask the question. But yeah, fundamentally, it's all about logistics and kind of the nuts and bolts behind what happens on stage.
Understood. Thank you so much.
If you like calendars, timelines, checklists, operations might be for you. Okay, who else has a question?
I do have another one if no one else does.
Yeah.
Okay, Mily, this question is for you. For your degree, what type of courses did you take?
Yeah, so kind of I mentioned before, half of the classes were like leadership classes, like how just developing your leadership skills. I know it's like kind of fluffy, but it was actually very helpful in like thinking introspectively about what you believed and things like that. And then half of them were like actual management. So I had to take like a general managing arts organizations, and we kind of just like plowed through everything. It was like 16 weeks of like, this is fundraising, this is marketing, this is operations, this is education and community engagement, this is, and so that was very helpful. Just an overview class. I had to take a fundraising class. I had to take a strategic planning class, which was really boring, but I know how to make a strategic plan. Some people really like that. That's a strategic plan is, if you don't know, is basically like a written document that says these are our goals for the organization between 3 to 5 years or something. So I had to take strategic planning. I had to take I think managing arts organizations in the 21st century, where we talked about how arts organizations are, what the pivot is going to look like in the 21st century, because as we all know, especially now, our organizations are going to look very different, and that's the kind of the topics that we talked about. I did not have a finance class, which I wish I had one in my program. And I know some people do have, but I think it's really interesting that arts management programs are so different. Like some of them are very just leadership heavy, some of them are very management heavy, some of them are more like finance heavy. I think that's really interesting, but those are some of the classes that I took. So
Oh, well, just a round of applause for our panelists. I'm just so grateful for your time, and we did it. We talked about this path for an hour, but there's still so much more to talk about. So the email addresses of our panelists are in the chat. Okay, you have just made now 3 new professional friends. 4, Brianna, like you have more professional friends. You're building your network by coming to this conversation. And if you're watching this video afterwards on our YouTube channel, so just you're showing up. That is great. And keep showing up. And if you want to continue interacting with us here, we've got a next conversation. We're doing these once a month. And our next one's actually going to talk about what does music teach us? And what that's supposed to be meant to be an encouragement for us music students. And at heart, that being a musician really does give us skills that we can translate off the stage. So visit our website, orchestracareers.com, to join our newsletter, and you'll get first, word about the upcoming events. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we're going to be just keeping in touch there. You can always reach out to us there if you have any questions. So thank you again to our panelists. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll see you again in the next conversation.